Welcome back to News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. I'm Corey Inganamort, filling in for my friend Vince today. Thank you so much for joining me on this warm afternoon. You can dial into the program, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Would be grateful for your contributions. I want to revisit a story Vince covered about 6 weeks ago or so with our next guest, Nick Fondacaro. CNN was slapped with a lawsuit which could pay the man $1 billion in a defamation lawsuit. So it's a very expensive lawsuit. CNN is in a lot of legal battle right now. And here to discuss this and where it's heading, what CNN's latest defense is the man I just mentioned, Nick Fondacaro, associate editor for the Media Research Center and Newsbusters, and he joins me on the phone right now. Nick, great to have you.
Thanks for having me back, Corey.
Of course, the pleasure is mine. So if you could just reset the story for us a little bit. CNN is slapped with a lawsuit for upwards of $1 billion for what?
So basically, they allegedly defamed a Navy veteran, Zachary Young. He's a security contractor who, after the fall of Afghanistan, was working his sources and his connections to try to get a bunch of women out of Afghanistan. And he was successful in about 20 of them. And his employers there were corporately sponsored individuals he was getting out. He worked for Audible, Bloomberg News, basically one of CNN's industry colleagues on that. And of course, there's a lot of money involved. You got to grease the wheels, grease the palms, make sure different people are on duty and stuff like that. And these were corporately sponsored things, so there's a lot of money involved. And CNN suspected, or at least they accused him of taking part in this black market of exploiting women and individuals trying to get out of Afghanistan. And them using the word black market accused him of a crime. Basically, because when you look up basically every definition of a black market, it involves illegality. While CNN court has originally been trying to say, oh, we meant gray market, just an unregulated market. But a gray market, unregulated market is not a black market. A black market is illegal activity. But now, basically, with Mr. Young's counsel making the argument of you accused them of a crime, CNN now has to sort of find a way for them to be like, well, we weren't accusing you of a crime, but guess what? You were a criminal in this instance. And what they're citing now is Taliban Sharia law, because women are not allowed to move about the country without males from their family and aren't allowed to leave the country. And he was helping to facilitate that. So according to CNN's legal defense now, he is guilty of breaking Sharia law.
Wow. I want to take listeners back in time to when Jake Tapper aired this segment for the first time. Again, Zachary Young is a young man who was in Afghanistan trying to get Afghans to evacuate when the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal was taking place. It was a very dangerous time. Here is how Jake Tapper covered that, and he really does slander Zachary Young in this audio.
In our Worldly today, the U.S. government, the Biden administration, says that as of last week, it had assisted in the departure of at least 377 U.S. citizens and 279 lawful permanent residents of the U.S. from Afghanistan since August 31st. Still, many Afghans who desperately want to flee Taliban rule, and Afghans who say their lives are at stake, they remain behind. As CNN's Alex Marquardt has discovered, Afghans trying to get out of the country face a black market full of promises, demands of exorbitant fees, and no guarantee of safety or success.
Desperate Afghans are now being exploited, like that young man, told that they can get them or their families out if they pay exorbitant, often impossible amounts. Found a man named Zachary Young, who is one of many advertising evacuations from Afghanistan, posting just this week, "We can deliver." One LinkedIn user posted messages with Young where Young said it would be $75,000 for a car to Pakistan. He told another it would be $14,500 per person to get to the United Arab Emirates, or Albania for another $4,000. Prices well beyond the reach of most Afghans. We got Young's number and called, but he didn't pick up. In a text message, he told CNN that Afghans trying to leave are expected to have sponsors pay for them. If someone reaches out, we need to understand if they have a sponsor behind them to be able to pay evacuation costs, which Young says are highly volatile and based on environmental realities. Young repeatedly declined to break down the costs or say if he's making money.
So Nick Fondacaro, black market, that was the key term that CNN used to describe Zachary Young and what he was participating in. Black market is considered, well, price inflationatory, illegal mostly, right? It's the black market. That's the term that Zachary Young is suing over. And this lawsuit is $1 billion.
Yeah, so basically because of the use of black market and basically hinting at human trafficking and all of that stuff. And throughout this case, they were able to get, through discovery, access to internal CNN emails about them chatting about this report. And inside of it, there were talk of like really explicit language. We're going to get this Zachary Young MF and all of this like stuff that.
So they were targeting him.
They were targeting him. Basically, because of these messages, the court and an appeals court was able to say, hey, there's enough proffered evidence that there could be express malice and actual malice and outrageous behavior on the part of CNN employees that a jury could be able to rule punitive damages. And the reason it's able to reach upwards of $1 billion, maybe even more, is because you have all three of those things, express, actual, and outrageous behavior. The cap on punitive damages in Florida has been lifted, which is why we're able to get close to $1 billion here.
Wow. So in court, has CNN, the defense, have they been able to prove at all that Zachary Young was inflating prices? Because if security is involved, if busing, if airplanes, it's a very dangerous, specialized skill set to have someone to go into a very dangerous territory to evacuate these people. Has CNN provided any evidence that that Zachary Young was inflating the prices, or are they just going with this because, well, they felt like it?
Well, basically, they have been challenged in an appeals court. A judge sort of pushed on them and said, "Hey, doesn't exorbitant prices isn't that a subjective thing?" And CNN's counsel at the time basically said, "Yeah, it's subjective." And what they were arguing was whether or not they had accused him of a crime. And then they're sort of arguing about the motive behind using the phrase black market. So they've sort of, it seems for the most part, given up on whether or not the exorbitant fees are actually exorbitant or not, though they will still lightly contend that in the documents, but though it is not the crux of their defense in this instance here. And actually with Marquardt, Newsbusters has gotten a hold of an unredacted, a partial unredacted transcript of Marquardt's deposition in the case. And basically he admits in his deposition that they did not find any illegal activity on the part of Young.
Wow.
And he actually got a promotion in the midst of this defamation suit.
Well, it sounds like he's got a great suit. He's got a good chance of winning this. And mind you, $1 billion, that's more than Fox News paid out to Dominion Voting Systems when they were sued. It was $787 million that Fox News had to pay. And that was pretty devastating for the company at the time. And they are still recovering it. I went back to some of the court proceedings to grab some audio from it. You posted it so helpfully on Newsbusters. A lot of the basis for the defense of CNN is really what they meant by the term black market. And it's really what CNN meant by it, not the actual definition, because as is typical from the left in the media, but I repeat myself, it's all about what you feel in the moment and not so much facts. Take a listen to this. This was in court. Charles Tobin is CNN's legal counsel. He's arguing that CNN didn't mean that it was illegal.
The thing in this particular case that does seem a little more actionable was the fact that, you know, when they were talking about Mr. Young, they had his picture on the thing, and there was a chyron that says he was involved in a black market. And, you know, I've looked in a couple of dictionaries, 3 or 4, and the first definition for black market in all the dictionaries is criminal activity. And, you know, if you are accusing someone of criminal activity and they're not involved in a crime, that's usually defamation per se, correct?
Under the law where we would be looking at the defamatory meaning, perhaps it would be. Here we're on a question of actual malice, express malice, and outrageous conduct measured by objective standards. Under that criteria, Your Honor, regardless of what the meaning may be in the dictionary, which is an objective definition, what plaintiff needed to show is that subjectively, CNN intended that meaning. Otherwise, there is no facts in the record to give rise to a reasonable jury question about actual malice.
Tell me how the triad works.
The triad, Your Honor, is a group of 3 different departments at CNN. It's the Standards and Practices Department, it's the Legal Department, and it's the Editorial Department. They come together and
so these are lawyers and professional writers that are used to dealing with words and have dictionaries and know how precise what words mean?
One would presume, Your Honor, that they're educated people, that they've been in the business for a while, but Your Honor, there is nothing in the record discussing the word blackmail at all among any of the CNN journalists.
Yeah.
And it is plaintiff's burden.
Well, black market is the word that was used in the Chiron, right?
Actually, Your Honor, the words used in the Chiron and said by Jake Tapper when he introduced the story was Afghans trying to get out of the country face a black market full of promises, demands of exorbitant fees, and no guarantees of safety or success.
So he basically agreed with the judge that, yes, we did use the term black market, but they didn't mean to say it was black market, Nick.
Yeah, their biggest argument is that they're trying to say gray market, but as CNN has often said, words have meaning and the truth matters, right? And basically, these are the words that came out of what the lawyer there, Tobin, admits there, is that the words came out of Jake Tapper's mouth. And currently, CNN is also blocking Jake Tapper from being deposed in this case as well. The plaintiff's counsel wanted to speak to him back in September. They floated the idea, and CNN has sort of been playing these games about trying to hear from Tapper. They're also withholding their journal conduct guidelines and keeping those from the plaintiff from discovery. They only recently learned about CNN's conduct guidelines in June after a deposition of their corporate representative that got pushed back like months and months. So CNN's been doing all of these delay tactics that they definitely don't like or they decry when Trump uses them. And another thing, too, that they were accused of recently is destroying evidence because they put up posts of this report on YouTube, on Facebook, on different social media, on X, all these different social media sites. And when it became clear that they were going to get sued, they started taking all this stuff down. But what the plaintiff's counsel is arguing is that if you go to these comment sections, you can see that these people have a very strong negative opinion of Mr. Young based on the CNN reporting, where they say some really horrific things about him based off the CNN reporting. And it shows that CNN's reporting created this negative, hostile attitude against their client. Yeah. And as they point out in the hearing there, in the audio we heard, his images on the screen. This is a man who's supposed to be in the security business, so his identity, his just quiet discretion as a security contractor is now breached because his face is all over the place.
He's lost a lot of money because of it.
Human trafficker, yeah.
Yeah, and in your piece, he lost a lot of money because of it because he's not getting the same job opportunities that he used to. And now I think you mentioned it earlier, but I want to revisit again. The latest update is that CNN's kind of doing a little pivot. Well, this black market thing, we haven't really had a good time. Weren't successful explaining that away. But now they're leaning into this new idea that Sharia law, yes, Sharia law, which may I remind you, it's the Taliban are not internationally recognized as the government of the country of Afghanistan. Taliban recognizes Sharia law, which applies corporate punishment for things such as theft or petty little crimes. Now CNN is claiming that this man shouldn't have been there because of Sharia law, and he's evacuating women who weren't allowed to. Is that a pump fake to you?
This is I don't think not so much a pump fake as they're putting a lot of emphasis on this because this was part of their motion for summary judgment, and this was the crux of that because they want the case completely thrown out. And basically, they're like they point out like part of what is breaking of Sharia law was all the stuff that Young and other operators who were getting people out of the country. So some of the stuff that they include as guilty of breaking Sharia law, avoiding the Taliban, making it past their checkpoints, hiding people from the Taliban, basically getting women who are not allowed to leave the country without male escorts and all of this stuff they're not allowed to leave because they were helping them escape utter oppression from these terrorists. He was breaking the law, so thus we were theoretically right to call it a black market and say that he was engaged in illegal activity.
Gotcha.
And they even sort of complain that Zach or Mr. Young had forced them to make this line of argument, being like, we didn't accuse him of that. He's saying we accused them, but we were right even though we didn't mean that at the time.
Gotcha.
And they were basically saying we didn't say black market, but we were trying to bring attention to war profiteers, which I did a quick Google search. Profiteering, especially in this context, is illicit illegal activity that involves black markets.
Wow. Nick Fondacaro. He's from Media Research Center and Newsbusters. He has been at the front of this story. We will follow up with him as more news develops. CNN facing a $1 billion lawsuit. We'll see where it goes. Nick, thank you so much for your time today. We'll do this again soon.
Thank you for having me on. The trial begins January 6th of next year.
January 6th. Well, hopefully there's updates before then, but January 6th, J6, when CNN goes down. All right, Nick, have a good rest of the day. Thanks again to Nick Fondacaro. Speaking of the Taliban, Kamala Harris has a new campaign advisor. It's her brother-in-law. Her brother-in-law, his name is Tony West, the former Obama Justice Department attorney. He defended a convicted terrorist sentenced to 20 years in prison for fighting with the Taliban and colluding with al-Qaeda. Yep, that's our vice president and, for her, hopeful president. The company you keep. Your calls, so much more. Kamala Harris, the energy behind her, it's fake. I'm going to explain why. 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL. I'm Corey Inganamort, filling in for Vince Coglianese today. Thank you so much for joining. 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL if you'd like to join the program. Phone lines are open. We'll get to those shortly. I want to talk about how inorganic this Kamala Harris energy is. Everyone says, oh, there's so much energy behind Kamala Harris, and the polls do seem to be tightening. Well, I don't know if we should believe the polls. I mean, the polls had Hillary Clinton beating Trump by 7, and he overperformed all of the polls, especially in the Midwest, and I expect something like that to happen again this year. But Kamala is, first of all, offering concerts to open for her rallies in fear that she wouldn't be able to sell out an arena in Atlanta, Georgia, for example. And she's also offering influencers on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, well, money to promote her campaign. Trump was on the live streamer. His name is Aiden Ross. I never heard of him before today, but he just gifted Donald Trump a Cybertruck, which I think those are actually kind of cool. I've seen quite a bit of them in Arlington lately. My first instinct was like, oh, that's kind of weird, but I've seen a bunch of them in person now. I kind of want a Cybertruck. I can't afford one, but I think they're awesome. They just gifted Trump a Cybertruck with his iconic photo after the assassination attempt while he raised his fists in the air and said, fight, fight, fight. It's really neat, but they did this live stream, and Trump was asked by the live streamer, which, by the way, at its high point had over 500,000 viewers watching this. So the energy is behind Donald Trump, and going to social media, you really do get a lot of views as opposed to MSNBC, CNN, the mainstream where nobody watches anymore. But Trump was asked about Kamala having people twerking at her rallies because she did have Megan Thee Stallion, and you have to say "the" because it's Thee, Megan Thee Stallion, open for her campaign in Atlanta. I thought this was a funny answer by Trump.
I want to ask you a question. She did a rally recently. She had a rapper speak, and then she had a rapper twerk at a rally. Yeah. A rapper was twerking at a rally. Yeah. I want to know your thoughts on that. It's crazy to me to think that there could be twerking at a rally.
Well, what Hillary did is she would go out and get Bruce Springsteen. He'd get much smaller crowds than I got, to be honest. And he had a guitar, right? I don't have a guitar. But he would fill up a place, and then he'd finish, and they'd all leave, and she'd be speaking. So now Kamala's doing the same thing, because nobody wants to go watch her. Nobody. No. I mean, she speaks for like a short. Nobody's going to want to watch her, and nobody does want to watch. Now, at least there's a little bit of curiosity, but there's no value really in going and watching her. So what she did is she's gotten a couple of rappers, and they fill up the place. But what she does is a little bit different. She has them go last. That's smart. I give. So in other words, they want her to finish her speech, get the hell off the stage, and then they can listen to the rap.
The performance starts.
No, it's pretty.
It's kind of smart.
Hillary didn't. No, I give her credit.
Yeah, give it to her a little bit.
Hillary never figured that out. She'd get some star, and the star would fill up the place, and then the star would leave, they would leave, everybody would leave, and she's talking to an empty stadium. Anyway, this is a little better idea.
I thought that was funny. Let's hope we never have to see Donald Trump twerking on stage. That's a visual nobody needs, and I don't think it's going to be winning any votes. But the energy behind Kamala is all made up. It's fabricated. He has rappers performing before and after her campaigns, and a screenshot shared on social media. Had a little bit of cough there. Is showing that Kamala Harris is offering money to influencers to promote her campaign. Here's a screenshot. We're offering $150 cash paid bonus incentive as a small token of appreciation for those selected. Hurry, spots are super limited. So I guess you can apply to this. We are asking you to 1, encourage your fans to share, like, and follow Kamala. 2, post one of more memes only using our pre-approved assets. Feel free to add your own spin or commentary on your TikTok IG too. That would be awesome. So they're going to give you a pre-approved meme to share on your social media if you're selected to get the $150. Because you have to be an A-list or a B-list, D-list like I am, person to share your content on social media. And finally, they're asking you to post it. Post your content to TikTok, Instagram, or both. Mention @Kamala Harris, hashtags, #Kamala Harris, #Harris 2024. So none of it's organic. None of it's organic at all. Looking at my Twitter right now. Breaking news. I don't think this is breaking news, but the Trump campaign manager, Chris LaCivita, typed, breaking news. According to my sources, Kamala Harris is not picking Josh Shapiro. Maybe some 4D chess there. Maybe that's an incentive for her to actually pick Josh Shapiro. Maybe he thinks that he drags down the ticket with all these scandals coming to light, suppressing a sexual harassment claim in his office. You remember he thinks trans women are women, all that kind of stuff. We'll get into Josh Shapiro. We should know probably tonight, maybe tomorrow, who she's going to pick, but that's the update there. Let's see here. Let's head to the phones. Why don't we? Chris is calling in from the front line of the heartland. Line number 2. Chris, welcome to the Vince Colonnade Show.
It is Corey with the story. What an honor.
The honor is mine, Chris. The floor is yours.
I wanted to touch base about what you mentioned on Friday. I have my nickname for that candidate in question because she's Jamaican, of course. And because she's constantly stoned, I think we should refer to her as Ganjala.
Ganjala Harris.
She's Ganjala Harris, yes.
How much weed has she smoking in her day and locked up in black Californians for the same offense she committed?
Oh, yeah, openly and flagrantly. I challenge anybody. If your child sat down at the dinner table and started rambling on like Camilla, how long would it be before you handed them a sample cup and pointed at the bathroom? But what I called about was, if you live inside the Beltway, there's not really an awful lot you can do other than arm up. But we advocate something, I refer to it as mindful readiness. And I call it mindful readiness because the concept of prepping scares people and it intimidates people. But if you live in an area that affords it, I can't emphasize enough, store the right kinds of fuel, store the right kinds of food. If you can have chickens and things like that, do that. What we're seeing right now is a confluence of several different events that don't seem to be related. I mean, from Israel and Russia to the banking financial issues today. And, I don't know if anybody else noticed, but this morning there was an outrageous amount of GPS latency where that's the government reminding us that that's their toy and not ours. Yep. And they usually influence that latency when there is civil unrest possible. I just think we're really on the cusp of some scary times. And people talk about generators and they go get generators and they get propane generators, and that's wonderful. But if the ish does hit the fan, what you have in your tank is all you're going to get. Yeah. Gasoline is volatile and dangerous to store in any quantities, but diesel fuel is a beautiful thing because it can run your generator, it can run your tractor, it can run your furnace, and it can run your car. Think about continuity of the different types of stuff that you want to store in bulk.
Yep, absolutely. I've seen some of your stuff. I've seen some of your stuff. Chris holds a gathering of right-minded individuals for a bonfire at his place.
Patriots Potluck Bonfire, sir.
Patriots Potluck Bonfire. I went there once. It was a great time. He's got a great place in the middle of the woods, and he is preparing, and we can learn something from Chris. But I appreciate that contribution today. But Gonjala. All right, I'm going to go with that one, too. I'm going to mix that one into it. Gonjala Harris.
Great job, man. Have a good afternoon.
You too, Chris. I appreciate it. Back to the DNC paying influencers. I forgot to mention this. They actually put out a video trying to recruit influencers. They're actually, normally you would do this like kind of under the radar, hush, hush. So I don't want people to know that we're actually paying influencers to push our Democrat talking points. But the DNC actually put out a video trying to recruit influencers.
I'm so honored to be a part of the creators that the DNC, that they have established something new, a different lane for people to get information and content out there. And I'm glad that they're giving us our space to show content. It's the newest way that we get information. Traditional media will always be there. It's always been there. But what we do know now is that creators have a lane. Your voice matters too. Even if it's on your phone, through your tablet, iPad, whatever you want to call it, with your camera on your shoulder, whatever you have a voice. And that is what I'm so glad that the DNC, they realize that. DNC 2024 Chicago is where you need to be, not where you want to be, where you need to be.
So there you go. In an unrelated story, did you see second gentleman, I call him Mr. Kamala, Doug Emhoff? You know what he did years ago? He got his daughter's nanny pregnant. We're not entirely sure how the pregnancy ended. There are unconfirmed reports that the pregnancy was terminated. I can't confirm that. A lot of outlets have reported that, but to me, it's not super trustworthy at the moment. But he did confirm that he did get his daughter's nanny pregnant, and this is probably what resulted in his marriage failing, as they did say that, they broke up and there was trouble in the marriage. But what a creep. What an absolute creep. Doug Emhoff sleeping with his nanny's, his daughter's nanny. It made me go back to this point in time when Doug Emhoff was talking with Jonathan Capehart about the dangers of toxic masculinity. Now that you know this information, how Mr. Kamala is just such a creep, this will make your skin crawl. Listen to him talking about what men should do.
Let's talk about masculinity for a moment. Has being second gentleman changed your own view of perceived gender roles or what it means to be a man?
This is something I've thought about a lot and something I've spoken about a lot. There's too much of toxicity. It's masculine toxicity out there, and we've kind of confused what it means to be a man, what it means to be masculine, where you've got this trope out there that you've got to be tough and, angry.
According to Mr. Kamala, masculinity is impregnating your daughter's nanny and running away from it.
And lash out to be strong. It's just the opposite. Strength is how you show your love for people. Strength is how you are for people and how you have their back, and how
he didn't have his daughter's back.
You stick up for other people and pushing out against bullies. I mean, that's what I believe it is. So every time I can speak against this toxicity, we're seeing it with our younger people. We're seeing it in our discourse and our politics. In the media, you're seeing it as it relates to so many of the issues that we're pushing back on. So I think it's a problem, and I'm going to continue to use this platform every time I get to speak out against this toxic masculinity that's out there.
Toxic masculinity. According to him, toxic masculinity would be, I don't know, a father to that child that your ex-wife should have carried to term. I don't know. Just an idea, but it makes sense. I mean, the left all think this way. Pete Buttigieg, you heard him on the White Dudes for Harris call. He said that, well, women having access to abortion is freeing for men. Freeing so Mr. Kamala can go impregnate his daughter's nanny and run away from it. And that, according to Mr. Kamala, is not toxic masculinity.
I'm so glad she has made freedom the theme of her campaign, because I think in so many ways that's what's at stake. And yes, women's freedom is Exhibit A after Donald Trump demolished the right to choose. But of course, men are also more free in a country where we have a president who stands up for things like access to abortion care. Men are more free.
What an absolute creep. And he's the one, and his party is the one calling J.D. Vance and our party weird. These guys are creeps. Creepy. They call us weird. They're creepy. Let's head to the phones. Let's go to, how about Cher in Utah, calling all the way out from Utah on line 5. Welcome to the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thankful for your call.
Hey, great. So I've been thinking this for a while, and I haven't heard anybody else say it. And so maybe it's a conspiracy theorist or theory or something, but I think the polls that people are quoting, they're quoted from the media who lies. And the polls, I don't think are necessarily push polls. I think that's like 1990s or something. I think that they're actually putting out these polls showing that Kamala is ahead or close, so that when they cheat her in, like they've been doing for years now, when they cheat her in and she's the new president, they can look back at the polls and reference them and say, these polls show she's ahead. Why are you even questioning this? Yeah. So I think it's just another thing that they're.
It's good to
another
have
way that they're.
It's good to have your guard up. It's absolutely great to have your guard up. There is definitely some narrative shaping by the media, and they promote certain polls. Like Morning Consult, for example, had Trump up 4 in Pennsylvania, but losing Michigan by 11. That's statistically impossible. That's a crappy poll isn't worth the paper it's printed on. There is definitely a narrative shaping by the media. The only good thing about that is Republicans cannot and will not be complacent after seeing these polls. It's going to drive up the vote for us as well. I do believe that the polls are tightening because they aren't running a corpse in Joe Biden anymore. Kamala Harris can attempt to complete a sentence, even though she speaks in circles. Definitely have your guard up. Volunteer poll watch. And I think Cher is definitely onto something. Who knows? She says a conspiracy theorist, but usually about 6 months, the conspiracy theorists become fact. Let us get one phone call in here. Let's go to Lorraine in Springfield, line 1. Lorraine, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Oh, Corey, thank you so much for squeezing me in. I had to tell you, I've been wanting to tell you ever since you've been filling in for Vince, how wonderful you've done on the job. Oh. I mean, you're a great interviewer. You organize the show. You got great guests. He should be very proud of you. I had to tell you that.
Oh, Lorraine, you're too kind. Thank you so much.
And I really mean it. I mean, you're fantastic. I mean, he won't need another sub-host. You're it. And
Lorraine, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're up against the time clock. All I can say is that I work with the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest talented, hardest working host in all of radio history, Vince Coglianese. And everything that I do here, I learned from him. And I got a lot more to learn from him. This network has been nothing but wonderful. Larry O'Connor, Chris Plant, they're all just the best in the business, and it's great to learn from them. I wish we had more time with you. I got to go. The great one, Mark Levin, is up next.